All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict podcast. I am one of your hosts, Peter Taff.
I'm your second full-time host, Kyle Herbert, and back from the brink of death,
Bill Ogden.
what did you have, Zika?
West Nile virus.
Swine flu?
It's pretty much the same thing, yeah.
You think you got it in that Arkansas turkey hunt or wherever?
No, it was here. I didn't realize it. I missed the news articles, but there's a couple articles out there, and there's some confirmed cases.
Well, if you are ill,
It's not fun.
if you're ill at home and need some medical assistance, you obviously want to call your local fire department, and they can help out with that.
Call 911 and the helpers help.
Peter?
Fortunately,
Who's
you
our
didn't have to.
guest?
So, speaking of that, we are very fortunate to have Marty Lancton with us today. Marty, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a neat setup you guys have going on here.
We do our very best, and by that I mean the absolute bare minimum.
And
That's great to be expected. That's
yes,
good.
speaking of, we are powered by Chaos Theory.digital, Josh Belland, and Or Strategy Group. And of course, so Josh has set this all up. So check him out if you need any digital marketing needs, or Amanda Orr if you need any public relations help, or me if you need to mediate, or Kyle or Bill if you need to go kick someone's butt in the courtroom.
Call Kyle.
Call me.
Don't call me.
That's right. Bill's trying to
first, and then I'll call Bill.
Yeah, he'll call me with his questions.
All right. So Marty, your official role is with the firefighters is what?
President of the Houston Professional Firefighters Association.
All right, and that covers all the city of Houston firefighters?
City of Houston has the third largest municipal fire department in the nation, roughly 4,000 firefighters and paramedics. And
Hey, that doesn't sound like that many.
it's a lot. I mean, there needs
No,
to
I
be
mean, you're right. I'm saying I would have expected us to have more than that.
Well, we should. Unfortunately, part of the problem that we're dealing with is what has gone on for the past 8 years under the previous mayor's administration, which, just to boil that down very quickly, is that we're down 500 firefighters and paramedics from where we were in 2010.
Wow.
We're running twice as many calls, and that just means that it's going to take longer for us to get there when you have an emergency, and it's a bad thing.
Luckily, over the past decade, the population of Houston hasn't grown, so that's good.
Yeah.
Only by about 1 million people.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
Yeah,
well,
give or
it
take.
clearly hasn't grown, except double.
Yeah.
It's also my understanding that the incidents of like electrical fires and weather-related emergencies that you guys sometimes respond to, those are really leveled out here in the last 5 or 10 years.
No. Plenty of natural disasters, plenty of fires. Fires are up in Houston, not down. We're not zoned. So you've got heavy industrial right in the middle of residential, and, two don't always mix.
If you want zoning, go to Dallas.
Yeah. And get ready to lease a 3 Series BMW, because you got to have, you have to if you're there.
I've got lots of bedazzled jeans and Ed Hardy shirts also.
So, yeah, Marty, there's always a, Dallas, in the legal world, there's always a Houston v. Dallas kind of.
Oh, there's always, if you live in Houston, we all know that Dallas people just like to show off and
Just an inferior group of people.
a lack of substance. You gotta project.
I don't even think they listen to music up there. That's what I heard.
I mean, who puts a show called Dallas when you have the heart of the oil and gas industry here in Houston? That's all I want to know.
I met.
I mean, there's nothing up there.
What turns those TVs on?
Huh?
Houston, you're welcome.
Yeah. What was the guy's name? The guy that played JR?
You're looking at me.
Larry Hagman.
Larry Hagman.
Thank you.
I met him once.
Good.
Tall fella.
Yeah.
I mean,
Was he wearing a hat?
no, he wasn't. Lisa Blue from Dallas brought him to like a lawyer dinner one night. She was like, "This is my friend Larry Hagman." I was like,
How'd you get invited?
"Hey, Larry Hagman, I'm Kyle. What's shaking, man?" Anyways, he was really chill.
Just famous people.
Yeah, Kyle
Lisa just
I
wanted
mean,
to-
look at his hair now. Even with the haircut.
We didn't even recognize him when he came in.
Had a bit of a trim, so if you're listening, maybe check the YouTube version of this because it's less magnificent than it used to be. Marty, where are you from originally?
I'm born and raised right here in Houston.
Where'd you go to high school?
Straight Jesuit.
Oh, all right. Did you stay around town for college, stuff like that?
Went up to Blinn and then went to the A&M TEATS Fire Academy training program, and then worked my way from Austin, a department up there, back down to Houston in 2003. And so I've been with the Houston Fire Department since 2009, but been in the fire service since 2000.
So you worked at the Austin Fire Department.
Cedar Park.
Oh, Cedar Park. Okay, great.
But
I feel like there's a deposition right now. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, Kyle.
Yeah,
I'm going to object to the non-responsive portion.
So,
So noted.
what for a period of time you were with the West University
Yes,
Fire Department.
yep.
What years were you there?
2003 to 2009.
Right, because I grew up right around the corner on Rice Boulevard.
Yeah.
And so when we were kids, you could have a birthday party at the fire station.
Before you go any further,
Yeah.
what's the statute of limitations on arson?
You know, I think it all depends on what crime was.
All right, okay. Sorry, I didn't want to get you in trouble, Peter.
I'm fine. Another got out of hand. Everything was confined to the backyard.
Very good.
So you could have a birthday party at the fire station when I was a kid. And
You like rent the fire station out?
You need to rent it. You know, you just come up there.
Yeah.
You know,
They-
firefighters are nice people.
Yeah, do they still do that? I got a 40th.
I mean, not officially, but people come up. We encourage people to bring their kids up and come ride and sit in the fire truck. And
Joke's on y'all. I'm going to roll up with 20 adults ready to drink.
the number one thing you would want to do is slide down the pole.
Oh, yeah. And I will do it provocatively.
You know, what's funny is that most people don't realize that it is not as easy as it looks. Those poles, they look at them, they're like, oh, it's nice and shiny, it must be easy. No, most people grab on with their hands, and by the time they get down, they realize it's a bad decision because it's going to burn your hands. So the key is to let your legs do all the work. You're welcome. Pro tip for the day.
I dated a woman that had that same philosophy at her work. No, I'm just kidding. I've never dated Mom. I didn't date her.
You're a filthy animal. I have an uncle who was a firefighter in Detroit and Toledo.
Oh, yeah.
And for my 10-year-old birthday or something, we were up there, and he held me and slid down the pole while holding me. And it may have been the perspective of time, but my recollection is that pole was about 80 feet long.
Yeah.
And it was the longest 30 seconds of my life. You're up there, man.
It is not a short ride.
Do they still use the pole? I mean, why do we have the pole? Do stairs really take that much longer?
Well, originally it was designed because the way that the fire stations were built, they were 2 stories, and then you had the bays on the first floor, and then you had the living quarters. And so we're running calls 24 hours a day, and it is far faster and easier to slide down a pole than it is to make your way down the stairs.
Let gravity do the work?
Yeah.
Do you guys still have Dalmatians?
No. You know, a funny story about why Dalmatians actually stopped happening was because sometimes the Dalmatians like to go into the neighborhood and go meet with the other dogs, and there were too many complaints that other dogs were getting.
That's why the American Bulldogs have those black spots on their eyes.
Why did they use Dalmatians in the first place?
Man, you're asking a question that I don't have the answer for. If you hadn't have asked it,
You
I
are
probably
the
had the answer.
president of the firefighters.
We don't have Dalmatians.
Yeah.
You know,
This is the 70s.
I think history. First of all, it's a historical thing with them. But they did serve a purpose. But I think they served a purpose back in the horse and carriage times, and it's just carried on as Dalmatians of the firehouse.
All right.
Yeah. Well, when we had the birthday parties, now looking back, I noticed all the moms came to those birthday parties for some reason.
Well, they had to get their calendar signed.
Yeah, that was it. And once looking back, I know why.
That's also why wives aren't allowed in the fire station anymore either, just like the Dalmatians.
Yeah. So currently, how does that work? If you're a firefighter, you do a weekly shift or?
Yeah. So we work under federal law. Firefighters, if you work for a public fire department, you can work a firefighter over 40 hours without paying them overtime if they're on a 24-hour shift. Mm-hmm. So we work 24-hour shifts because you have to man it 24 hours a day. Our calls come in Houston all day and all night. And so somebody's got to be there to respond. So we work 46.7 hours a week. We work a number of 24-hour shifts, and then we're off, and then rinse and repeat. So that's kind of our schedule.
So I missed this. So federal statute allows you to work without being paid overtime, or that's what gives you overtime?
No, federal FLSA states that if you work for a public fire department and you're on a 24-hour shift, if you work over 40 hours up to a certain point, then you don't have to pay overtime because you're working a 24-hour shift. Basically, that's your living quarters. You're operating in the day, the night. It's just I think we're cost effective that way. So that's why you see firefighters on 24-hour shifts. Conversely, if you had, say, 3 shifts and you had 8 hours and 8 hours and 8 hours, you could only work 40 hours then. So it's a benefit to the city. And that's just the schedule historically that fire departments have been on.
I got to figure out a way to transition my law firm into a public firefighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell my staff, we only work half days. You pick which 12 hours.
So so your average firefighter will work 2 24-hour shifts per week?
Yes,
Or
average of 46.7 hours a week. So 6.7 more hours than the general public, more than the police, more than anybody. So it's unique and specific to the fire service.
What do they do with the rest of their time?
I've seen the basketball.
Well, they've had to
goals.
work 2 and 3 other jobs, just to take care of their families up until we've gotten to this point. Thank goodness with Mayor Whitmire. But typically, you'll have a firefighter that has to produce for his family that has to work multiple jobs because the pay is not exactly what I would say great.
Yeah.
Up until which we'll talk about.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely talk about that, but it's still a growing process. We've had a neglect for the third largest fire department, Houston Fire Department, for over a decade and a half, and you've seen the wages absolutely stagnant, the horrible pay, and so that's what we chose to try to address and fix when I was elected in 2016, and that's what we did.
Couple of questions, but the first one is, what made you want to run to be the head of the firefighter union?
It's a great.
Is it a firefighter union? What do we?
It's Houston Professional Firefighters Association, but it is a public safety union, just like the police union. But the question is, what made me want to do it? I don't think I grew up thinking that I was going to take this job. I think through a series of circumstances that had come up, opportunities, and what I had seen that the firefighters were not being given, were not being taken care of. The general public, let me put it this way, they assume that they have the respect for the firefighters, the men and women, and the work they do. They assume that municipal governments are taking care of them. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case here in Houston for a very long time. And so I owned a couple businesses here in Houston, and when I sold them, and I was still a firefighter, I recognized that there were some challenges that the firefighters were dealing with, and I just couldn't figure out why. We have to first figure out what the problem is, and so I ran for office. I was elected, and from that point forward, really dug down deep into the facts. That's a good key word for you guys, facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Evidence.
We like to play with facts.
Yeah, it's true. And really wanted to look at where we are and how do we get out of the problem that we were in.
You got the look for it. Just so you know, you're like whenever I think of like a union head, I'm like, that's what I want out of it. Like you're one baseball bat and some rolled up sleeves away from like the poster child.
I this day and age, if you're able to hang into the world of politics and deal with that, it's sometimes more hurtful than getting punched in the face. So,
I can't imagine. I read comments just from the show, and there's only like 4, and I just cry every night.
So, 2016, you're elected president of the Houston Professional Firefighters Association, and then in 17, you became vice president of the executive board of the Texas State Association of Firefighters.
Yes. So
how does that work?
So basically, what you have is public safety unions, agencies in Texas. You are part of an international. So there's an International Association of Firefighters that represents the professional firefighters from U.S. and Canada, and there's about 330,000 of us between U.S. and Canada, and each in its own jurisdiction. So the one here at Houston is representing the nearly 4,000 men and women. The state firefighters represents the collective voice, much like the Trial Lawyers Association, of what the needs are, and so that you can advocate at the legislature to make changes for the working conditions, the pay, or different aspects that are in state statute. And then more broadly, you have you're a part of the International Firefighters Association, which our headquarters is in D.C., and we deal with the federal government, and we deal with federal benefits and things that affect firefighters that flow down to the state and to the local governments.
Who gets to choose? So you have your state fire code, you have your city fire code, then you have international fire code, and it's bits and pieces are adopted kind of all over. I do a lot of work in the industrial space, so I get to. It's a maze trying to figure out what code is applying to what situation. Do y'all have any control over that, or is that all mandated by the legislature?
No, well, it starts at the top. So what happens is they adopt. There's uniform standard codes, life safety codes. So I sit on a technical committee, part of the National Fire Protection Association, which is the rulemaking authority on the federal level, and it all flows down. But basically, where it ends up is on the local side, whatever entity you are in, meaning if city, county, whatever governmental body you're in, they adopt whatever parts of the fire code that apply to them. And so you have the broad, here's the complete revision, but it usually takes a few years for local municipalities to adopt certain codes from it. They're not required to adopt all of them. They're just required to adopt the ones that affect them and that have to do with life safety.
Okay. I was always curious about that because the ITC fire in 2019, I'm co-lead of that entire litigation, and it took us weeks to figure out which pieces of the code. Then we hired an expert, and he's like, "Oh, y'all are dumb here," and he just handed it to us. I was like, "How'd you get there?" And he's like, "Oh, I kept up as we went, because this is what I do for a living." So yeah, I was always curious as to why it was such a maze trying to figure out which codes apply.
It really is and it is a reality that comes to what the individual towns, cities, counties, what is unique to them, because in rural parts of Texas, you're not going to have the same, urban development, high densely urban population like you do in the city of Houston. And so you don't need all of that additional stuff. And so they make it to where you can basically pick the pieces. There have to be elements of everything. The International Fire Code has to be applied, but the revisions get to be changed as the local agencies do.
Okay.
Question, the fire marshal. So if there's a fire and the quote-unquote fire marshal checks it out and maybe reaches some conclusions, is that through usually a fire department? Is that a fire marshal?
So it's not a fire, it's a arson investigator. So there's many different divisions within the fire department, but one of the divisions is the arson division, which they are certified as state licensed firefighters and medical EMTs, paramedics. But then they also go and get their TCOL, their police certification, and they're specifically trained in arson investigation. And so they have full police power, but their expertise, if you will, is in figuring out how fires get started. The fire marshal's division is typically in most areas, and in Houston is where the regulatory side comes in, where the inspections come in, and where the life safety codes, when you get a certificate of occupancy, all the things that have to do with applying what the state law is or the local law is. So unique to a lot of things in Houston, if you follow the rules and you have a certificate of occupancy to operate a business and you're over capacity, well, the method and the way in which you can enforce the law is because of their over limit, part of their certificate of occupancy. So the jurisdictional authority rests with the fire marshals. But if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, then there's technically nothing to enforce because there's nothing there.
So with fire marshal, that's a countywide, not citywide? Okay.
City and county. Harris County Fire Marshals has their own. It's jurisdiction based, but the city of Houston we have our own life safety division, which is the inspectors, the fire marshals.
Let me make this easier. Bill's at the club in Midtown, right?
I'm dancing.
And it's
Got too many people with
I'm dancing.
He's feeling the beat, right? He's sweating. There's people all over the place. And he thinks,
I need some orange juice.
there might be too many people in this club.
Mm-hmm.
The roof is not yet on fire, but it might be. Who does he call?
Well, you can call there is a non-emergency number, and then you can report anonymously if there is an issue. They'll send a fire marshal out to take a look.
How do you choose which fire marshal call? Or I guess, how do you choose whether to call Houston Fire Department versus Harris County Fire Marshal?
Well, typically on that certificate, it'll say the phone number.
Oh, that makes sense.
Say complaints call.
I would say,
You got to find your way through the bodies.
I just
Find
got
a certificate.
through that haze.
If it's a life-threatening situation, you just dial
911, yeah.
So
If someone's having like a party, a big event, and they need to get a permit to do that, beyond this CO that you would have if you were ongoing business,
And
is that permit issued by someone in the city municipal, or is it with y'all?
yeah, with us. I mean,
Okay.
anything that has to do with life safety comes under the fire marshal's office.
Got it. Okay. Other things. Okay. And then paramedics.
Yes.
And so ambulance comes, City of Houston ambulance. Is that staffed by your folks? Okay.
So you have, in the city of Houston, we cover all the fire responses, which also include car wrecks, pit-ins, rescues. Then we have the firefighters that are cross-trained as paramedics. Everybody's an EMT, and paramedics are the highest level. And they are riding on the HFD medic units. And then you have another division that's specifically related to the rescue division, technical rescue, high-angle rescue. You have a hazmat division specific to dealing with hazardous materials. You have an Office of Emergency Communications, the 911 center, that you have Houston Fire Department personnel in there. Life Safety Division and also the Arson Division.
So I got a quick
And
question.
aircraft rescue firefighting too.
And what?
Aircraft rescue firefighting. The ones
helicopter?
at the ones at the airports.
Oh, so you have let's talk a real world example, the Watson grinding explosion.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the city of Houston. Who leads that investigation? Harris County Fire Marshal or City of Houston?
No, City of Houston.
Okay.
If it's in the jurisdiction of the City of Houston, legally, the agency responsible is whatever jurisdiction it's in. So if you're an unincorporated part of Houston, you're in the county, the Harris County Fire Marshals would take care of it. But if it's inside the jurisdictional limits of the City of Houston, by charter, by law, that is the responsibility of the City of Houston. They may call Harris County Fire Marshals for if they need an additional set of hands, but typically people call us.
I only ask because I saw a little bit of a power grab struggle in that case, a little bit, and I was curious. Nobody ever told me who won.
You don't have jurisdiction here, man.
Yeah. It was no, this is my scene. No, this is our scene. It was just straight out of what's on TV. And so I was curious. So if it's in the City of Houston Fire Department is trumping Harris County on that.
Yeah, no, if you have a jurisdiction, it is the agency in the jurisdiction having legal authority. So there may be a dispute about where, because what you're talking about, I think, was right there on the edge. But that's getting into a survey question.
No, yeah. So, and then the other question I had is, I assume the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office and the City of Houston have to work hand in hand on a lot of stuff. Are y'all compartmentalized, or is it kind of one big happy family?
No, I mean, I've never heard of any.
Do you guys have different softball teams? You're on the same softball.
Everybody's we're on one softball team. It is to take care of people and to save lives and to figure out what's going on. But I've never heard of an instance. Harris County Fire Marshals in our division, they absolutely work hand in hand, and they're part of also some federal teams as well.
A little bit of advice for some of your firefighters: just tell them to put shirts on. Some of us don't have abs.
I know.
Jesus.
But the problem is the ones that don't have abs that take their shirts off.
Honestly, they look better than Kyle. Look at his face.
To be fair, there's 5 of us in the room right now. Each one handsomer than the next.
Josh is a Navy SEAL.
We are almost halfway to a very doughy looking firefighters calendar.
We're the softest calendar.
All we need is like 7 more kind of middle-aged, puffy-looking hobbit dudes, and we could really, you probably already have a publisher in mind for this calendar.
We actually produced the firefighter calendar. So
wait, is that real? Is there a real calendar?
Absolutely.
I've never seen one.
Your girlfriend has one.
I'm going to order one.
I'm glad that you've committed on air that your law firm is going to buy a table at our
100% we will.
We are we preview the next year's calendar at our event. It is an amazing event. Y'all really should come. It sells out every year, and it goes to our 501c3.
And that's the Red Hot Gala?
That's the Red Hot Gala.
When is that?
October 5th at the Royal Snesta. HoustonsBravest.org. HoustonsBravest.org.
That's where we can buy a table?
Well,
or that's where Peter can buy our table?
Yes.
I had a girlfriend in college who I dated for about 2 years.
She was a firefighter.
She lived directly across the street from the firehouse that's like right there.
So you never slept.
And, I've still got an axe to grind with those dudes. And I would say, why are you buying so much of this pre-made cookie dough? And she was like, I just like to have cookie dough around. Turns out she and her roommate were hot-tailing it across the street like twice a month to drop off cookies. So, I don't know. I got a bit of an axe to grind with the red hot firefighters.
Don't grind that axe there. They use axes and they're grinded, Kyle. They're grinded.
Should we talk about the...
Yeah, but I had a couple more. We told Marty before there's going to be some really basic kind of dumb questions to start with.
Yeah, and Peter was going to give them to you.
And, okay, one I want to reiterate because that was quick. The Red Hot Gala, and what is the URL for your
shirt? HoustonsBravest.org, and that's the website for the 501c3.
Buy a table right now.
This will be our 7th gala, and we started with nothing, and through the hard work and dedication of so many of our volunteers and our board, we've raised over roughly $4.5 million, and that's from
Jesus
community straight back to.
I mean, what am I supposed to? I can't compete with that. Are you looking at that?
Listen, we can do anything with Photoshop.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need a lot of airbrushing on me.
We'll just give you one of those plates that has the abs already painted in.
Yeah, you got.
I've got a Captain America suit that's got them on there.
We're going to have to buy a whole nother server for all of the.
That's just clickbait.
Digital editing we're going to have.
I just want to make sure all these firefighters are 18, right?
Make sure and incorporate some of this on the YouTube video so we can get some hits. And then, okay, this is one of these dumb questions. When you hear on the news, they say there's a 4-alarm or a 3-alarm fire. What's the difference between how many alarms and what's the max?
What's an alarm?
Well, if you get called on an initial fire, that's your first alarm, and that has a number of units that respond to it, depending on the type. If it's a business, you get more engines, more ladder trucks, more district chiefs that run the scene. If it's coming in as say a high-rise on fire, then you get even more. And then as they're responding, if we're getting updates on the radio, they can upgrade it. So what it basically means is that the more alarms you have, the more firefighters and fire trucks you're going to get, because it's going to take even longer to put the fire out. So 4 alarms is a whole heck of a lot here in Houston. And some departments that aren't as big, it may not be, but places like New York, Chicago, Houston, L.A., when you're getting to 4 alarms and 5 alarms, you're talking about half the city is there, and it's a really bad fire.
So max is 5?
Well, you can keep, I think they stopped counting at 5.
Yeah.
What's the last huge fire that's been that big?
Oh, we have huge fires every day.
Really? Like multiple alarms? Now that we're using jargon? Now that we know what we're talking about?
We just had, I think just yesterday, we had a large fire out at a recycling plant.
Oh, yeah. I actually saw that on KHOU.
A number of Houston firefighters. But there's so many fires that happen in a 650 square mile radius, and there's a lot that you don't see on the news because, you have so many that if it's not 2 or 3 alarm, you probably don't see them on TV, but that doesn't mean that they're not big, and that doesn't mean that they're not taking a lot of time. It just means that the camera crews did not get there or didn't think that, a 2-alarm fire was worth diverting from something else, because the fires in Houston happen every day.
We talked about this on the last show, but the lucky thing for the fire department is they can focus on fires because we don't have the deadliest highway in the United States here in Houston, and you guys don't even have to respond to car wrecks, so that's nice.
If only that were the case. I'd love that.
Cush gig.
Listen, we'd love for nobody to get in a car wreck, but, that's the other thing. Over the years of the past 50 or 60 years, the fire service a long time ago, when ordinary construction from a long time ago, legacy-type construction, was very thick lumber. And what that means is if you go into a house that's built in the 1950s, go to the attic, you're going to see very large pieces of wood. And if something catches on fire, it takes much longer for that piece of wood to reach its ignition temperature and to light off. And over the course of the years, they have found a way to make it a whole lot cheaper, a whole lot lighter. And the problem that we have with the building construction here is that as long as there is no issues impeding, it's the same structural strength. But the second that you have fire go to a truss-type construction, it fails rapidly.
That's my bone to pick with Jimmy Carter. Habitat Humanity is the reason for that. I'm telling you.
And so they keep the material, and then but beyond that, it has changed just from fires. And then if you ever watch Johnny and Roy and Squad 51, that was actually kind of the catalyst to what the paramedicine program was in the 70s. And basically what that means to your audience is the paramedics now can basically do what an ER doctor does during a cardiac arrest emergency, meaning we give IVs, put tubes down your throat, cardiac, we defibrillate you, we can do needle decompression. There's a number of things that they do out in the field. So they're remarkably talented, and the Houston firefighter paramedics are some of the best in the nation because they've experienced. You have doctors that are in a room in an OR, and you have lights, and you have staff, and you got phones. We're going into people's homes.
Chaos.
We don't know where you are. You could be on the 3rd floor. When you're doing CPR on somebody that's on the 3rd floor, you got to think logically, how are you going to get them from 3rd floor down to the ambulance while we're doing what we have to do? So there's a unique set of skills that came under the fire department. And then later on, hazmat became a big issue in the 90s. And people realized that all these things going through the rails, somebody had to go respond and mitigate them. And unfortunately, a whole lot of firefighters died because they would go up and didn't know what it was. No MSDS sheets, no hazmat instruction. So then we focused on that, came under the fire department. And then after 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, and we have to be trained in how to respond to that.
You have to be trained on how to respond to a weapons of mass destruction? Jesus.
So in 2002 was one of the first to go to Anniston, Alabama, which is Fort McClellan, old retired World War II Army base. And that's where they had what's called COBRA training. So it's chemical, ordnance, biological, radiological.
It's a great acronym, though. COBRA sounds cool.
It is pretty.
It sounds real cool.
In front of it.
Yeah.
And so you went there to deal with live VX and anthrax gas and how to mitigate it.
Y'all get trained on anthrax?
How to mitigate it.
Well, because there was a couple. I mean, in 2002, it was popping up a little bit.
So right after that, so after 9/11, that became, before Department of Homeland Security was even there, it was under the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice ran it before it was even formed. And so we went there, and federal government would fly in these experts. I mean, these people, probably from black sites. They come in, they teach us, but it was just like FDNY from all around the U.S., L.A., us, people up in Austin. And they would train them in how to respond and how to mitigate these. And so it was a very unique experience. In fact, I went to this training with now the director of TDEM, which is the Texas Department of Emergency Management, Nim Kidd. Great guy, good friend. I've known him a long time. We were suite mates in there, and it's an old retired Army base that I tell this one story, and he laughs because it's true. We were there for 2 weeks. You would fly in for 1 week, and then most people would go home on Friday, but there happened to be 2 different classes back to back. And so everybody left for the weekend. They threw us the keys of the DOJ van, and they just said, we trust you guys.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? And so we were
Civil rights violations.
One day we just said, okay, we're going to go for a run. And we were running, and Nim's like, let's go this way. And I'm like, you see that sign? He's like, no, that doesn't mean anything. So we're running, and then, it is quiet as a church mouse.
Landmine facility?
No, it's an old ordnance buried where you buried live ordnance.
No problem.
You see this Hummer come flying over the ridge, and the look on his face, and I was like,
we're not in the right spot.
We're not in the right spot.
This is not where I parked my car.
Here. And I was like, clearly leaving.
Say, that's what we're doing. SR-71. We're here from Cobra.
Yeah.
Maybe you heard of us?
Yeah. And so we quickly found our way out. So I tell that story all the time. It's the last time I follow Nim Kidd running. But he's a great guy. And so all of those different facets of the fire service. So basically what I tell people at the end of the day is when you don't know how to fix it, you don't know how to put it out, you don't know how to get somebody out of it, you don't know how to take care of somebody, you call the fire department. So the technical training has increased dramatically over the years.
Yeah, y'all seem like the SWAT team of firefighters. I always hear or see fire departments sending certain units to like mass scale forest fires and stuff like that. Does Houston have that as well?
So we started Houston firefighter named Justin Huddleston, great guy, started the Wildland Division here a few years back.
So recent.
Yeah. So actually through our charitable foundation, the one that can't wait to see you guys at.
Pete's about to buy a table from
we purchased a wildland vehicle to kind of go off into the areas that are brush, like, not so much Memorial Park now, but back in the day, and out in different areas to where you have some brush fires. You got
the Piney Woods, 60 miles north, so it's where it starts.
So we're part of a state task force, and so they will be deployed to go to different areas, and then if necessary, they'll be federally deployed. So they've been deployed quite a bit. They've been helping out, and I think they're actually on deployment right now, and I for life of me can't remember where, but during the seasons where up in Austin, the Hill Country, wildland urban interface is now the new thing. And what that is the director of the, I just blanked, under, on the federal level, Dr. Lori Merrill Moore is the head of the U.S. Fire Administration. She's a good friend. She's amazing, very intelligent. And the studies we've done over the past 10 years, because all the stuff we do is data-driven, is you have a lot more people going out into areas that are heavy foliage. You didn't have houses out there before. That's why you see a lot of these houses out in California that, are catching fire because they're building their homes in areas that have never been built in. Same thing is happening in central Texas. And so when you have a really, really heavy rainfall for a year, and the next year it's kind of dry and it dries up, you just now created a huge fire load.
I remember Bastrop. It's still got, when you drive there, it's still got all the dead, burned trees.
Yep. I drove through that the first day of the fire. I was coming home from a football game. No joke. We're driving. I looked up and I was like, why is the highway on fire?
Why is it orange?
And we decided to just put the pedal to the metal and gun it. But I have crazy photos of like black pillars of smoke. I think another hour one way or the other, we would have been in real trouble. But that bass drop was pretty wild.
But Kyle has no fear.
I have no fear, except for one thing. A couple of years ago, I had a cardiac event in my 1930s built house with a very narrow stairwell.
Who showed up?
And the paramedics from the city of Houston showed up.
Boom. You're welcome.
It's like 4 pretty large dudes and a fairly attractive young lady. And the guy was like, we're going to have to put you on a backboard, but it's a chair, and we're going to lower you down. And at the time, I couldn't breathe, and I was screaming and crying in pain. And I was like, I don't know, guys, just put me out the front window. And this
I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at your quote.
And this really nice lady was like, this is not going to hurt. You're fine. We're not going to cut your clothes off you. We're going to put you in this nice chair, and these nice gentlemen are going to gently lower you down the stairwell. And that was like 5 lies in a row.
Well,
because I was screaming my head off naked in my front yard strapped to a chair. And my neighbors, who I had only known for like 2 weeks, I mean, it was a great way to meet not only some nice firefighters, but my neighbors.
And your neighbors looked at each other and were like, well, that's the 3rd time we've seen him naked.
Yeah.
Listen, it's the theory that I tell people. It's like if you trip and fall or you slip and you're around somebody, you have a choice. The choice is to think very quickly. And if you immediately get up, everybody just starts laughing and then you're embarrassed, right? So my theory is that, I know this because it happened to me and I did it and it worked, is if you slip and fall in front of a whole bunch of people, just stay down for about 5 seconds. And you go from them starting to laugh to, oh my gosh, I hope he's okay. I'm like, well, yeah, I think so. But now you have compassion, not humor.
I'm like a professional soccer player when I go down. I'm rolling in pain.
Yeah.
For 25 seconds.
The second thing you do is call Bill or Kyle.
Yeah. And then if you're not at your own home, call us, Kyle, and Kyle will get you
It was called a stair chair.
A stair chair.
Kyle, that's embarrassing.
It's really funny because I really did have a good experience with they saved my life. Well, my doctor told me, 15, 20 minutes either way, you could have been dead. And another guy I know had the exact same thing happen, and he did pass away because he didn't get to the ER fast enough. But what's really funny is, so I have this great experience with the Houston Fire Department folks, and
you can't say, and he passed away. But the funny thing is, that doesn't transition.
This guy, he's fine. He's dead.
Still.
His family's...
Go ahead.
So a couple of hours later, I'm in the ER basement of Memorial Hermann. This is during COVID. So there are like just bodies everywhere. And HPD brings in this guy who's like handcuffed. He's a massive person. He's handcuffed to like 2 other people. And I don't know if I can say this on the podcast. He is just tripping balls. Like he's tweaking, he's freaking out, blah, blah, blah. They chain him to a door. And then I look up, and about 20 minutes later, these cops take him to the bathroom. And I'm in the hallway strapped to a gurney. And the only thing between the exit of the ER and the exit of the bathroom is me strapped to a gurney. Oh. And there's 2 cops standing out there with like little taser guns. And I'm like, hey, guys, could you roll me like 10 feet?
Can I get behind you?
That way? And they're like, what's the problem? I was like, just get a nurse, roll me 10 feet that way. And they're like, what's up? And I go, hey, when Tweaky McTweakerface comes storming out of here with a mouthful of foam, like,
I don't want to be this way.
He's going to have to hurdle me or go through me. I'd just rather be 15 feet. And the cops literally like, oh yeah, good idea. We'll roll you out of the way.
Did he run? Did he make a run for it?
No, he didn't. He was very docile. I think he just had to go to the bathroom real quick.
He just wanted to snuggle.
Yeah. So Kyle is behind the table.
Well, Kyle's with his BOCO verdict.
Not to make a segue into that, but that's exactly why when we tell people, seconds matter, it's not political talking point. It's reality. And the difference between somebody living and dying is a matter of seconds and minutes. And when you're having a cardiac issue, means that your body's not getting oxygen, your heart's not getting oxygen, and the more time you go, the less survivability percentage you have. And it does not matter to most people if they've never experienced it, but when it's your family, you want heaven and earth to be moved. And it does not matter how much money you make, how successful you are, how poor you are. When it's your family member, you want everybody coming. And you only have to use this once. God willing, nobody has to use this at all, but that's clearly not the case. You just have to understand the value. It's an insurance card you never want to have to punch.
100%. I've been in a similar situation with Kyle. I didn't have to ride the funny chair.
The stair,
but,
yeah.
you know, I was able to make my way down to the first floor before I was picked up. But yeah, God, that's embarrassing, Kyle. Jesus. The stair chair.
Are there pictures of it? I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Well, but if there's pictures of it,
Yeah, can we get some body cam footage?
I do have a funny picture of me in the hospital the night after, where I found out for the first time that my blood type was B positive, and somebody brought me a hat that said B positive, like BEPOSITIV, and they put it on my head. And so there's a picture of me in the cardiac care ward at Memorial Hermann going like this.
So on that note, I got a question.
Yeah.
Why did Sylvester Turner hate you so much while he was in office?
Well, that's a good question to ask Sylvester. I think he didn't like losing, and he got plenty of losses. It started out, very. We'd known Sylvester a long time. He'd been 27 years in the state legislature, and Sylvester as a representative and Sylvester as a mayor were two totally different people.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when he came into office, he did things that had.
What year was that?
2016.
Okay, 2016. All right. You've been in the right time frame.
but yeah, just to reset it. So we're at the end, I think, Marty, of a very long battle that you've had with the city on behalf of your group, and I guess let's start with the ending. There was a resolution recently
Yes.
that a new contract's been approved. What are the kind of high points of the new contract?
First break down what the issue was, and then tell us what the solution is.
The issue was the city of Houston was not paying its firefighters what the law mandates.
And that comes from the mayor's office.
Yes.
Okay.
Come from the mayor's office, and at the time the mayor was Sylvester Turner, and state statute is quite clear. And what we ended up with, thank goodness for Mayor John Whitmire and his leadership and his support of public safety, is we got a negotiated deal done prior to us going to trial on March 25th after 7 years of being in the courts. So we were able to sit down and negotiate a $650 million back pay settlement to the firefighters and their families for
What do you mean back pay settlement? What is that?
7 years that the city did not pay the firefighters what.
And should have.
Yes.
So they've settled it, and they were like, all right.
And then we had a 5-year contract moving forward. So it's in total, it's about, I think, 1.5 billion.
Do you get a percentage of that?
Yeah, he gets a cut.
I wish. See, this is where it'd be nice to be a lawyer. I'd be like, I'll take 1%.
Yeah.
I'm doing God's work, and listen, the credit goes to our legal team, which is second to none. But
I hate hearing a public servant say how into public service they are. Like a true public servant. Come on.
Who was on your legal team?
gosh, which time? Troy Blakeney is our senior legal counsel. The guy's been around forever and a day, has written and is responsible for all of the changes, not only at Supreme Court level, but at every level, federal court, when it comes to firefighter employment law. He is the best. And so he leads up our team, but we have amazing appellate attorneys. Trip Marble is one.
Oh, really?
Yep. He is amazing. The smartest guy in the room. It doesn't matter what anybody says.
Trip's on the other side of me right now.
He's the smartest.
I don't feel good about it.
There is nobody I've met more that is he's a Rain Man, and I mean that in the most positive way. He is so good. We had Tom Phillips and Baker Botts for one of them. We had
You had me until then.
we also had Beck Redden for a little while to do some.
Wow, you guys just lining up the primo.
Well, there's a lot of history.
How much money do you guys have? This isn't cheap.
That'd be punting money to hire those firms.
Well, we do a good job of making sure that we are setting ourselves up for success. But what I'll say is, this is over the course of 7 years for different components.
Sure.
And so we ensure that whatever issue that we have going on, we have function-specific, legal representation. But at the end of the day, Troy Blakeney handles that all, and he's masterful. If you've ever seen him, if you've ever witnessed what he does, he's put many, many, many companies out of business, and by far, no offense taken to anybody here, one of the best litigators and his depositions are amazing.
Don't worry. I take no offense. I don't hold myself out to be a great lawyer. Pretty good, but not great.
So will that allow y'all to hire some additional firefighters?
Yes, I think at the end of this now, after the 7-year battle, we have lost, over the past 7 years, we're down 500 firefighter and paramedics from where we were in 2010. And
due to budget or due to salary?
No, due to firefighters leaving to go to other departments.
Because salary.
Because salary, not getting paid. And so we see the effect of what happens when you do not take care of the men and women that risk their lives, by the way, every day, and go out there. And when you have politicians that want to take on the firefighters, I don't recommend it. And we tell people all the time, we were here before you, we'll be here after you. And our mission is very simple, is to serve the community. And you heard one of us, you heard all of us, and we don't ask for anything other than what's fair. And what's fair will always provide evidence and facts to back up what we have and what we believe. And he just decided to go down a journey.
Let me ask you a quick question. Was the city of Houston's position prior to the recent change in mayor, was it anything more nuanced than, we just want to pay you that much?
No. In the prior years, there's 3 separate employee groups, and I get into political class here in a second. But simply put, over the past at least 2 prior administrations, there was a focus on public safety in one area in the police, but there was not the focus on public safety in the fire and EMS. And so what you saw was no pay happening for the firefighters, and the police, deservingly so, were getting raises, and so there became a great disparity. And so that just continued. And then when I took office, I put the data down and gave it to them, and I said, something's not right. And they didn't like that answer. And so we started out in district court, went all the way to the Texas Supreme Court, and won. And that court ruling came down the end of last March. And that told the city that they are going to be on the hook for the wages back to 2017, which is when this whole thing started.
That's a good point. You said the police that were getting their increment raises was well deserved. It wasn't, y'all weren't saying, hey, they shouldn't get that because we're not getting it. It was saying, hey, we should get that too.
Yeah,
there's a big difference there because it was framed 2 different ways when it went to the ballot.
Well, and that's don't let a good political story get in the way of the truth. The reality is that the city of Houston is the most politically charged town in the U.S., and people can disagree with me all they want. But if you go to New York, Chicago, L.A., it's a different environment. There is no other system of government in the United States that has the heavy mayor form of government like City of Houston. There are other cities that have a heavy mayor form, but it is with one key caveat, which is the city council can put agenda items. So if
and budget items,
if you're in contract law, if he who writes the contract and he who writes the agenda, if you're the only one that can put your item on the agenda, which is how it is in the city of Houston, the mayor is the only one that can write an agenda item. So you have 16 council members in the city of Houston that have no authority in which to place something to be discussed. And if it's not on the agenda, you can't discuss it in an open meeting because it wasn't posted 72 hours in advance. Can't take action on it. And so the mayor, Sylvester Turner, took his skills in 27 years in the legislature and came in and kind of ruled with a dictatorial spirit. And he wielded control and kind of forced everybody to do what they wanted. Because if I was one of 9 or 10 district council members that represented a particular area of Houston, not an at-large, we have 5 at-large which cover the whole city. But if I cover a district and I vote no on an item the mayor puts on there, then he doesn't give you a street lamp to put on next week to show your citizens that you're doing something for the constituents that you serve. It's that nuanced. And so that just happened over a course of 7-8 years. And every time you would go to a council member, they're like, we support you, but it's the mayor.
So back in the old days, the fire department would just identify their political adversaries, light their houses and businesses on fire,
and then not show up.
And then be like, we'd love to help you. Why didn't you guys try that?
I think I might have some lawyers at my door if we did that.
What question, was this tactic of kind of absolute authoritarianism by Sylvester that you speak of for defamation purposes. Was that new? Before that, was it more of a use the council?
The style of government was not new. His ability in which to wield absolute control and power is a product of his 27 years of the state legislature, knowing how to work the system. And if you put the pieces in place, you don't have to have the person agree with you. He could put something out there, and if you don't have a grasp of what it is, then you can't get involved in asking about why this is or isn't, or should or shouldn't be here. And also politically, you can just hide behind that. You can just say, I don't know enough. I'm not allowed to get involved. I don't write the agenda items. And if they're telling me this, then that's what I have to do.
Did Sylvester Turner do anything good for the fire department while he was in office?
Yeah.
Curiosity. You left. Okay. Sick burn. That was a great burn. I didn't see it coming either.
So the impetus for this, did the police officers get a new contract, and then you were told, no, sorry, you're not getting this?
The impetus was under state law, state statute. We're covered under what's called Texas Local Government Code 174. And basically what that is a unique set of statutes that cover uniquely fire and police agencies in the state of Texas. If you go to the voters of that area and you ask them to fall into that statute, HPD did not want that. We went out in 2003, and the voters overwhelmingly approved for us to fall under that. It's called collective bargaining. So within that law, it's very clear. So the city shall pay you in accordance XYZ. And then it has a list. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has what you have to do in order to sit down at the table. We have to negotiate in public for 60 days. And on the 61st day, if you don't have an agreement, by law, by statute, whether you like it, I like it, anybody else likes it or not, you are legally at what's called impasse. And that means you then fall into the next set that says within 5 days, you submit a letter saying, let's go to arbitration. And at the time, arbitration would have solved everything. It would have been binding, but it wasn't compulsory at the time. And so if the city fails to go to arbitration, the last remedy in the statute is that you have a district court judge do exactly what an arbiter was going to do, which is decide what your pay should have been in accordance with the statute. And so all of that to say they refused to go to arbitration. So we asked the district court judge to basically say, if you think it's 10, I think it's 5, you can determine it, and we have to live with it. But instead, what the city did, and knowingly did this because they were in a very bad position, was they just said, hey, we're going to challenge the sovereign immunity, the constitutionality of the statute that had been there since the 70s. And they lost
a lot of stuff in the 70s.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we did.
And is that what was litigated up to the Supreme Court?
Well, yep. They attacked that statute, and when all the Texas Supreme Court first time it had ever ruled in that case, there were two conflicting appeals court cases. One a long time ago before the statute got revised, saying one portion of it was unconstitutional. One appellate court said no, it is constitutional, and they applied in their jurisdictions, but nobody took it up to the Supremes. And so we did. Went to the 14th Court of Appeals. They unanimous ruling in our favor. Went to the Supreme Court, unanimous ruling in our favor, and sent it back down to the lower courts. And what all that means is that in the statute, we give up the right to strike under the statute. You don't want firefighters to be striking.
That would be
so.
Awesome, though.
In the good public policy, you want to have emergency response. Never do that. We don't advocate for it, but in return, you're supposed to have an expeditious resolution to a contract impasse. And what we just saw in Houston was for 7 years, it wasn't very expeditious. But we went all the way up. They lost, came back down, and the last part of the statute says that no matter how long you push it down the road, that you have to make them, you have to make them whole as to the employees' past losses.
Feels like a good law.
And did they have to?
It is good law.
Did they have to, after that came back down and you get a new mayor, did you then have to go through the arbitration process, or did you guys just sit down with John and hash out a deal?
Well, uniquely to this one point, and I'll get to that, is last, April, May, right at the same time the Supreme Court was ruling, then Senator Whitmire and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and helped us in the Senate. It passed a bill, unanimous out of the Texas Senate, to require binding arbitration now, instead of having to go to the courts and waste 7 years. Went over into the Texas House. It passed near unanimous. There were 3 votes against.
Name them.
I don't think they knew what they were voting on, but 147-3 is pretty darn good in the legislature. And then the governor signed the bill early, so it went into effect immediately. And this was while Sylvester Turner was in office. And basically, that would have streamlined the process to say, instead of going to court and trial, well, you go to an arbitrator, 3-board panel, you pick one, I pick one, and then they pick a third. And you have 60 days to get it done. And so as soon as we got that passed, the mayor then sued to say, Sylvester, that bill that just passed was unconstitutional. So he kicked the can down the road into he was out of office, which is what he was trying to do. So Mayor John Whitmire takes office on January 1st. He is sworn in, I think, on the 2nd. On the 3rd, his first day in his office, the first meeting he had was with the firefighters and with our legal team, and he ordered the city attorney to drop the pending litigation and to sit in a room and to negotiate and don't come out until you do. And so we did just that, and that's the kind of leadership that he's shown, because had he not done that, we would have had a 7-year waiting trial that was going to trial on March 25th.
That's a lot of pretrial interest.
So
it's a lot of interest.
Bingo. So we sat down, and he said he wanted to get it all done by the end of February. Thank God we had a leap year this year.
29th.
February 29th at 8 p.m. We walked out, and we had an agreement on the terms.
Good.
And so we went to the judge and let her know that we had.
Who's your judge?
Done.
Remember?
Lauren Reeder.
Judge Harvard Law.
Smart lady.
Super smart. Way smarter than us.
She was an amazing judge that was incredibly focused on. And she, irony was, when this case started, she was not on the bench.
Right.
He started. She was
in law. She went to law school. We might all do law school.
Came in 2018, and this started in the.
I think she's my contemporary. I think she's about my age, maybe a year.
She looks way younger than you. You got a lot more gray.
Obviously.
Even since the haircut, he looks.
Yeah, well, his haircut, he does look like an Instagram model now.
I looked like Jesus up until about a week.
Looks like one of those. Looks like he does a lot of like music videos on TikTok.
Okay, so then the city council had to approve it.
Yes, so we got it finalized. We then got the judge to enter in a final judgment order, and after that, took it to city council, and it was just passed last week, unanimous 14-0 vote, and one.
Where did they find the money? Because Sylvester kept telling us that there wasn't any.
Well, he said a lot of things, but I think what you've seen is
I was putting the ball on the tee for you.
No, I appreciate it. I saw that.
They spent all the money on the monorail.
And, well, we bought a bunch of property that was non-developmental for developmental purposes as well, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so Mayor Whitmire has come in and has been very vocal about looking at all the corruption and other things. And you've seen the DA that is already charged, I think, two different times with people that were taking millions of dollars. And
The outgoing DA.
Yes.
Allegedly.
No, she's outgoing.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
Kim's outgoing.
In the charges or the alleged.
Oh, yeah, alleged. Yeah. They've not been convicted.
Yeah.
So my point is that he's coming into an environment to where we've all known the city of Houston has had problems. It is definitely my opinion that under the last administration they did not
Streamlined it.
attention to it. So Mayor Whitmire came in, and he's a no-holds-barred kind of guy, and he is a person that wants to get things done, and he's not going to mess around. He's been doing this 50 years. He's not trying to go anywhere. He's trying to fix the problems of Houston, and there's a lot of them.
It sounds like they paid a lot of attention to it just on the
Mayor Whitmire
on the right side.
in us. The dirty verdict needs you.
John, come on. Grab a seat.
So
Pay a speaker's fee, whatever we got to do to get this guy.
We're not paying a speaker. You're paying a speaker.
It's for $650 million.
Yeah, we're asking for like 45 minutes.
No, we settled for $650.
yeah. And back,
John knows what I mean.
what does Marty? When are your members going to start seeing the benefits of some of this agreement that you just negotiated?
So the contract moving forward goes into effect starting July 1st. The payments for the settlement, we are in the Texas AG's office. Maybe by the time this airs, it will already be done, but we're in its finality. Part of the issue to issue a resettlement bond is what it's called. You have to get the Attorney General's signature. They have a public unit.
What's he charge you for that?
I don't think any.
I know a guy that knows him pretty well. Well, I know a guy that knows a guy that knows him pretty well.
Sure. Anyway.
But yeah, so we were waiting on that, and then per the agreement, it's supposed to be the last week of July, and then so for the
Just
family,
in time for fireworks season.
Are some of the firefighters that have left? They're also going to get their back pay while they were here.
yeah. So the people that have been here that retired, that
Nice.
you fit within the window. I mean, this stems a lot of years, and so there were about 4,900 and something individual calculations that we had to do, and I will tell you, it's a product of what you can do with stay the course. The fire.
Congratulations. That's
Definitely.
fantastic.
Thank you. They definitely deserve it. So many times that we've heard from them and their families that this is so long overdue, but they're emotional about it. They've been waiting for a very long time. They can send their kids to college. They can fix their homes. They can pay down the debt that they've incurred because they didn't have anything to pay. I mean, it's hopefully going to take care of the history of what they've had to go through, and then chart a course where we'll never be in this position again.
Leading cause of home fires. What do the people out there need to know to avoid fires this summer?
Well, electrical fires are very difficult to check if you're not a electrician. But if you have an older home, we recommend getting somebody to go out there and take a look and just do a once through a year. Do not, smoke in bed, which is not really a thing anymore.
Kyle does it. No, Kyle's a big smoker in bed.
That'll get you.
He'll fall asleep like this twice a week.
Horsehair mattress with straw in it.
Almost good.
Because I like to live dangerously.
Look at his hair. Of course he does.
I have asbestos pajamas, so, half of one, 6 dozen on the other.
What's the busiest time or day and time that most calls for the fire department?
So we actually did a study, and we studied every single call the city ran in 1 year. I mean, every single call. And what's unique about the city of Houston as opposed to other areas in the U.S. is that because we don't have really winter season, well, we had the freeze, but traditionally we don't have snow that comes down, right? Is that there's really not a measurable difference. Yeah, we are consistently this busy every day, day and night. 1,200 calls a day, 1,300 calls. I mean, it is.
Do other places that get a real winter, are they more busy during the cold months or less?
Well, they have space heaters.
Yeah,
That was my question.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it also is just a different set of challenges for them that they could probably see more fires than normal for us. It's not, because we're not dealing with the elements of the cold. A lot of it has to do with wiring issues and different things of old, facilities that have not been looked at, or people have done things they shouldn't. And so there is really just kind of depending on where you're at. But Houston is very unique in that it's far different than most cities, Chicago, New York. So we did not see a measurable change on any particular day throughout the year.
Wow.
Or through a season, because during the summertime it gets really hot and you have your own set of calls with that. And if it gets colder, you have your own set of calls with that. Gas leaks are a big issue, especially when you have freezes and different things that we got to do.
Well, luckily we don't have tornadoes here.
I know. Or a derecho.
Yeah.
Derecho.
So just to kind of wind down.
Yeah.
We want to, on behalf of the Dirty Verdict podcast, we want to thank you for saving Kyle's life.
Yes.
Glad you're here.
Without you, we would not have him.
Without you, this podcast would be 30% smarter and 30% more efficient, and probably 30%
More politically correct.
more politically correct.
And we want to congratulate you on your outcome. I know that was a lot of work and a testament to one organization, because I know y'all are very, very strong politically, and it shows if you organize well and you got active members, you can really, whether you're in a small community or countywide. So that was great, and just to have the fortitude to stay with it.
Well, thank you all very much for having me, and thank you for that.
Yeah. And for all our firefighter fans that are listening, if Bill Ogden, Kyle Herbert, or Peter Taft have a call, no reason to delay.
Yeah.
We're friends of the program.
Yeah, if you can get us on the top of the list, a VIP list.
I'll get you a stair chair.
Yeah. Oh, man, I would really like one. Just so
You should.
I know what I want to be for Halloween.
Sponsor a stair chair.
For Halloween, I want to have 2 firefighters carry me around in a stair chair all night.
But yeah, the stair chair is, I gotta say, it's a little overrated. It's not nearly as fun, but I still have my wheelchair from that.
It's not about the fun; it's about the embarrassment.
True.
So, and thank you for tolerating some of our kind of very basic questions, but it was very enlightening.
Well, hopefully we gave your listeners something to listen to, and if it's bad, just I'm blaming him.
Yep.
Hey, yep, that's what we do.
The screening of Backdraft right after this. This day.
That is the number one movie of rookies. We make them watch.
Yeah, fantastic.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, Marty, for coming on.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. If you like this, follow us on Instagram, TikTok. You can check us out Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
We'll be posting our
Dude, you nailed it.
posting our calendar here shortly.
Yeah, we have a calendar for sure. We definitely need a calendar.
Will be posted right now, right, Josh? Kyle's firefighter pick in the stair chair.
Put his face on the body.
Yeah.
Just me with some yellow rubber pants and like the suspenders.
Oh, no, I already have the photo that you're going to go on.
All right. Well, everyone stay tuned for that. And with that, we'll bid you a good night.
Thank you, Marty.